Americans who have been to the grocery store lately may have noticed that consumer prices have spiked. The annual rate of inflation in US is 6.4%, and it has hit the highest level in April 2022. Don't buy a house, car, or any big-ticket item without knowing the current market inflation trends. Number 10. Bitcoin and inflation is often touted as a way to fight inflation. The thinking goes that because there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins in existence, and because the rate at which new Bitcoins are created is predetermined and slows over time, Bitcoin will be less subject to inflation than other currencies. But this is not necessarily true. Number 9. The inflation of gas prices. The cost of living is increasing at an alarming rate, and this has led to the inflation of gas prices. In order to combat the high cost of living, one can take a few steps. The price of gasoline is one of the most important factors in inflation. The cost of crude oil, which is the main ingredient in gasoline, has a direct impact on the price of gasoline. When the cost of crude oil goes up, the price of gasoline follows suit. The opposite is also true. When the cost of crude oil falls, the price of gasoline declines as well. Number 8. US inflation rate is out of control. Find out how to protect yourself now. If you are in US, inflation is up. On the other hand, it's doing a lot of things right. Employment is up, and the national stock market is strong. There's a big push toward energy independence as well. It looks like these are helping to lessen some of the criticism that we've been hearing from James Baker, who's certainly not a fan of this president. Number 7. Jerome Powell promises inflation will rise soon. Is your portfolio ready? The Federal Reserve has been trying to raise interest rates in order to control inflation and make sure that the economy doesn't overheat. Inflation is one of the most important things for investors to watch. This is because it can have a huge impact on their portfolio. It can cause stocks to go up or down, depending on how it affects them. Inflation will also affect bond prices, which is why you should always be aware of this issue when investing. Jerome Powell assured that we won't see inflation rise too much for now, and he intends to control it as best he can. Powell has not explicitly stated his views on inflation, but he is generally seen as a hawkish central banker who is more concerned with inflationary risks than with stimulating economic growth. Number 6. What are the key drivers for inflation? The prices of goods and services are going up. This is because the value of money is going down. The value of money goes down when there is an increase in the supply of money relative to an increase in demand for the money. Number 5. Find out how much more your money is worth with the Yahoo Finance Inflation Calculator. In order to calculate the rate of inflation using the Yahoo Finance Calculator, you will need to first determine the Consumer Price Index (CPI) for the current year and the CPI for the previous year. To find the CPI, you can visit the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. From there, search for CPI in their search bar and hit the button that says Select Year. Once you have found the CPI, you will then use this information to calculate the percentage change of each index for the current year and previous year. These percentages are important because they provide a clearer picture of how much. Number 4. How to protect yourself from the effects of inflation. There are a few things that people can do to protect themselves from the effects of inflation. One option is to invest in assets that tend to hold their value or increase in value over time. This includes things like gold, silver, real estate, and other hard assets. Another option is to invest in stocks and bonds that offer high levels of dividend payments. This can help to offset the effects of inflation on the purchasing power of an investment portfolio. Number 3. What CNBC says about the inflation rate. The inflation rate is an economic indicator that measures the rate at which prices in the economy are increasing. The inflation rate in the United States has been above 6% for most of 2022, and it's expected to remain high in 2023. Inflation is a measure of how fast prices are rising or falling over time. Number 2. Facts about the Federal Reserve and inflation. The Federal Reserve is the central bank of the United States. It was founded in 1913 as a response to the series of financial panics and economic depressions in the late 1800s. It is responsible for setting monetary policy and supervising and regulating banking institutions, as well as managing the nation's money supply. The Federal Reserve System is made up of 12 regional banks, with headquarters in Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, Cleveland, and Richmond. The Fed has three main functions. It sets a target interest rate to control inflation. It monitors banking institutions to make sure they are stable. And it controls how much money is available by buying or selling Treasury securities, government-issued debt. Inflation is the continual rise in prices of goods and services over time. The Fed is the central bank of the United States. Number 1. Joe Biden promises to tackle inflation. Joe Biden's latest comment on price increases are expected to push the U.S. Federal Reserve to raise interest rates later this year. With inflation and other interest rates increasing, it is likely that the U.S. Fed will address this by raising the benchmark rate for loans. The Fed is expected to raise rates later this year as inflationary pressures increase. It is also speculated that they are considering a possible interest rate hike because the U.S. economy has been doing relatively well, and inflationary pressures have been increasing over the last few months. States with a major role in regulating the country's financial system. Inflation is typically measured by looking at changes in prices of a set group of goods, such as food and energy. Gas prices have been going up steadily for years, but still remain relatively low compared to other countries like Ukraine or China. Stocks are negotiable securities that represent ownership in a company or corporation, which can be traded on a stock exchange. Yahoo Finance is an online financial information service that provides news and information about stocks, mutual funds, bonds, ETFs, currencies, and commodities trading on US exchanges and around the world. Recent months have seen a high amount of inflation, with the Consumer Price Index showing the highest point in 3 decades. While other inflation metrics haven't shown increases to this extent, they have still gone up significantly in recent months. It is important to understand why the rate of inflation has risen in order to have a better understanding of how long the surge will last and what sort of policies could be passed. Analysts agree that the recent rise in inflation is unusual and not part of a regular economic cycle. The reasons underlying this phenomenon have not been fully explained yet, but the disruptions in global supply chains during the pandemic crisis and an unemployment rate that has not risen are factors. The price comparison today is shown to be in proportion to the increased prices during world shutdowns last year, and it is also impacted by consumer demand, which continues to rise after some economies were reopened. The value of stocks, bonds, and other valuables has increased by about 10% in the past year. This means that if you invest in a 401k with your company's matching funds, your savings will have a stronger purchasing power than it did last year.
Please like, subscribe, and hit that bell button for more videos.